just you and
We're going to talk about one of the most critical concepts when it comes to properly securing the cloud and any information security environment for that matter. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the concept of defense in depth. We're also going to talk about the different types of controls categories and also kind of walk through some examples of controls and how they reflect defense in depth. All right, so what is defense in depth? I would think of it from the perspective of if you may have a door on your house and that door has a lock. That's one control. All right, well, what if someone kicks in the door? What's to stop the person from going into the house and robbing you blind if you're not home? Do you have an alarm that alerts you? I've seen all these nifty Ring doorbells where someone clicks on the doorbell and that you can talk to the person and they immediately run away once they realize they've been detected. This is sort of an example of defense in depth where one control is good, but layered controls that protect your organization are really the ideal way to keep your organization safe. Now, some controls are going to be more critical than other, but the idea about defense in depth is that once your controls are implemented at various layers of your system, that is the best way to protect your data, information in the cloud, and ensure that your business can continue operating and reaping all those great benefits that come with cloud computing. All right, so the controls really kind of fall into three major flavors or categories. Management level controls, those are, or also referred to as administrative controls, those are the controls such as policies. These are how do you categorize data in your organization? What are the policies around the encryption standards you implement? How is data managed in sort of the life cycle? What policies do you have regarding the retention and secure destruction of information? What are your policies with regards to the proper documentation and handling of computer resources? How are costs associated with your environments captured? Policy and administrative controls really set the rules of the road as well as manage the culture within an organization to help establish the tone of how serious security is within your organization and how what requirements there are on your employees to maintain security responsibilities. Now, if the management controls are more of the why and the what, the technical controls are the how. These are the actual either devices or software or alerts that are implemented on a system to provide control depth. Technical controls, anything you're physical or technically implementing in terms of software to detect violations and threats. And finally, physical controls. These are the controls that might be employed at really the data center level when we're talking about the cloud. Is there adequate security? Is there fencing, lights, full-time security, security camera monitoring of the facility? What controls are in place to ensure that someone can't just go in and tamper with the physical hardware that customers have their applications hosted on? So physical controls are our last kind of control group. Now let's talk about the different types of controls. Preventative controls are those that, as the name implies, they overall reduce risk that a risk is going to occur. When you think about a preventative control, would be something such as having an intrusion detection system to alert you to problems coming in. Actually, intrusion detection is more of a detective control, which is our next flavor of control. This detects and identifies violations or incidents that are occurring. A corrective control is any control that's really used to remediate or fix a risk or situation. In the context of the cloud, being able to sense when an application isn't performing properly or isn't available and immediately beginning the disaster recovery process to fail over to another location to ensure that customers don't experience a prolonged outage beyond their expectations. A deterrent control is something that discourages violations. Often in the physical world, we talk about lights or signs saying not to go in or private property are really the best way to deter violations. Recovery, these are controls for recovering the system or information. We talked about disaster recovery as a corrective control, but it is also a recovery control. And then compensating controls, there's some instances where you may not be able to put in your ideal control. However, you might be able to put in other controls that help you figure out how to monitor the system. Perhaps you can't necessarily audit or document something as well as you'd like, but you find another means of capturing that information. That's an example of a compensating control. And these 6 different control types really help provide you with a different way of thinking through the type of risks that may affect your cloud system and what controls should be put in place to reduce that risk. All right, quiz question. The cloud provider has the greatest control and responsibility over which control type? Management, technical, or physical? If you said physical, you're absolutely right. We talked about physical controls being just as guards and lights and the lock on the door. Often, I think guards, gates, and guns is a term that's used to remember the typical physical controls. But those are the controls that are necessary to protect those actual assets that are in the data center. And another important concept to keep in mind is that from a controls perspective, from a security perspective, if you don't have physical security, you really can't ensure the reliability of any of the other aspects of security. All right, so in this module, we covered the importance of defense in depth, having layered controls that start at that high management level, are enforced through technical mechanisms, and also maintained fundamentally through physical controls. We talked about the 6 control types, as well as those 3 broad control categories. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.